active authenticated key agreement, which is a much more secure kind of primitive and the kind of security we can be expected to ask for in like real-world deployments over the internet. Then I will give some indication as to our motivation for our transformation, what has been done in the past, and then I will be presenting our new transformation. And then I will give a brief overview of the results that we have proven in our paper. So to begin, key exchange, is usually thought of as the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. And we can see this as Alice generating a ephemeral element and sending it over to Bob, and then Bob generating his own ephemeral element and then sending it back over to Alice. So they send it not in the clear, obviously, but as the exponentiation of a group generator, and then they can both combine them at the end of the protocol to derive a key. So here the security is because the discrete logarithm problem is hard, at least before quantum computers it was hard. And so the keys, and also because of the maths, the keys are equal. And so we have a nice simple protocol. So we abstract this in this form. So we just say that Alice and Bob both have generic ephemeral information and they exchange some messages, and then the keys are derived with some function. Now, the very important part of this kind of protocol is that we have no long-term secret information that is used. Everything is ephemeral, everything is on the spot. And so the two, usually the two basic properties we require is, first of all, correctness. The keys have to be the same and they have to be kind of random every time you execute the protocol. And the second is secrecy. So if you're given one transcript, you can see the two messages. You shouldn't be able to distinguish the key from uniformly sampled one. And this is the most basic definition that a protocol like this can satisfy. So next we talk about a much stronger form of security. So we begin with Alice and Bob, same, two-party protocol, but this time we do have long-term security information. Here we choose the form of public and secret keys. Then they're going to exchange a bunch of messages, not necessarily just two, and in the meanwhile they can use encryption, signatures, smaller protocols to perform cryptographic operations. And at the end they're both again going to derive keys. So the construction of the protocol is very similar, but the security requirements are different. So the first is that we're in a distributed execution environment. So we have multiple parties all ready to execute something like this, and they can interact with many other parties. We also have that the adversary this time is allowed to send in messages, fake ones, real ones. He's allowed to swap them around. He's allowed to reveal keys, and he's allowed to corrupt identities. And finally, the security we expect here is forward secrecy and explicit authentication. So I'm going to go through these different points in a bit more detail. So this is an illustration of a distributed environment. We see that we have several sessions from different identities, and these sessions actually don't talk to one another on their own. The adversary is responsible for making these conversations happen. So here we have honest conversations. The adversary is just relaying information. But the adversary can choose to send arbitrary messages like this and try and interact in some way. He can also reveal sessions which have derived their keys, and then he can obtain the key from that session. And finally, he can also corrupt entire identities and then reveal the secret key. And so he can decrypt, he can forge signatures from that point onwards. So this is, compared to the given one transcript, distinguish the key, this is a much stronger form of security. The adversary still has to distinguish the key in this context. For the secrecy, basic secrecy says that for two sessions where the identities have not been corrupted, the key has to be indistinguishable from random. But forward secrecy says that the adversary, after the key has been generated by the session, is allowed to corrupt the identities. So he can then go back and read and decrypt encryptions, things like this, and the key still has to appear uniform. So this is a scenario where you might exchange with the server, derive a key, and then you or the server might then be compromised by an attacker. And you want to guarantee that the key you derived beforehand is still safe, and you can still use that. As for authentication guarantees, so here we're talking about identity authentication. You want to be assured that you're really talking to the person you think you're talking to. And so for any session AI that's believing he's talking to identity B, we require that anybody who shares the same key as AI has to be B. So the adversary can't make someone who is not B accept with the key that AI has derived. So in this sense, we're not actually sure if a party UJ will exist, but party A will know that if he holds this key and someone else uses it later, it must be B, and he must be an instance of B. So this is what we call implicit authentication. And for explicit authentication, we start with the same AI believing he's talking to B, but by the end of the protocol, he has the guarantee that there exists an actual party of B that he's talked to and that he has derived the key with. So forward secrecy and explicit authentication are the two strong security requirements we're going to expect for our protocol. All of this in the distributed environment where the adversary has a lot of powers. So our motivation for our design, there's several points to it. So the first thing is that passive key exchange is easy to achieve. We've seen this with Diffie-Hellman or New Hope, which has been used in the Google experiment, and as well Frodo, which is another lattice-based passive key exchange. So deriving active authenticated key agreement directly from primitives is very hard. So these ones are actively secure within the TLS exchange, but without the TLS, these do not withstand active security. So we want to construct a generic transformation which isn't TLS, because TLS is very long and achieves things other than secrecy and authentication and these kind of things. Also, from a theoretical point of view, RSA keys are issued usually for encryption or for signatures. You should generate a new key for each use. But in the real world, a lot of applications have one key issued to them by the certificate authority and will use it for both purposes. And this yields to attacks. And it's not just a theoretical weakness. There has been cross-TLS versions attack, backwards compatibility attacks, and things like this. So we need a very simple transformation where the risk of cross-use of keys is not permitted. Finally, post-quantum digital signatures have been harder to develop than encryption. So recently there's been much more progress and there's more confidence in the proof of securities. But encryption has been the main point. And so we were trying to develop something that would not make use of signatures for this purpose. And also, if we restrict to just encryption, then we don't have the problem of the double use of keys. And so finally, obviously for efficiency purposes, you want very few rounds of communication. You don't want to have to be talking back and forth 10 times before you are guaranteed the secrecy and the authentication properties. So in the past, the first transformation from a passive to an active scheme were the Bellare, Canetti, and Kocek authenticators. So this one, you would take a passive key agreement scheme, and then for each message, you would then engage in a small protocol to prove the authentication of that message. So each message would require its own exchange, which would perhaps have signatures or encryptions and things like this. So you can see that the number of communication increases quite a lot. Then there was also the signed Diffie-Hellman and the station-to-station protocols, which were efficient, but these have been weak to many different kinds of attacks. TLS is also a very strong example of a transformation, but this one is, first of all, it's not provably secure for generic key agreements. So it does work with ECDH or with New Hope, but you have to make a new proof of security for every new passive key exchange you want to make. And also it requires many rounds of communication. So even though you have the pre-master secret exchange at the beginning, the following rounds of communication are still required to achieve the security notions. So Lee et al.'s transformation is actually closest to what we present. This one, both parties will run the passive key exchange with one another at the beginning, and then they will have further communication, either 2 messages for signatures or 3 with encryptions, to authenticate the communication and everything. So in this context, we present our new transformation. So we start with Alice and Bob with their long-term keys, like before. And so we will build our transformation on top of the passive key exchange. So Alice generates her first message, sends it across. We assume that the KA protocol retains some form of state. Bob generates his response, and he's able to derive the inner key kappa. And then Alice is able to derive the same key with Bob's message. Then they can both hash these with their identities to obtain the final session key. And we see actually that putting the identities in the keys already achieves implicit authentication, because somebody who is not Bob will put not Bob in the hash function, and so that key will be different already. And so here, since we use a passive key exchange, we don't have any use of the long-term secret key, so in some sense we've already achieved forward security, because corrupting Alice or Bob doesn't give you any advantage because the secret key is not used. But we have no authentication whatsoever. The adversary could reroute these messages, send them to other people, these kind of things. So what Alice is first going to do, she's going to append her identity to her message, and she's actually going to encrypt it over to Bob.